Hello, welcome to this episode of Thoughts of a Whole Brain Man. And today we're talking about altruism and the neuroscience of altruism. There's a man called Alan Shaw, who is a professor of psychology in America. And since 1994, he's been writing incredibly detailed and brilliant books on affect and affect regulation, affect dysregulation, and the repair of the self. I'll be doing a video just about his work on another occasion. There's another neuroscientist and psychotherapist in America called Louis Cozolino. And Louis Cozolino takes some of Alan Shaw's work, inspired by him, and rephrases it in a digestible, easy to read way. Alan Shaw's work is technical, very technical, but then he's been distilling information and data coming out of neuroscience laboratories and rephrasing it for the world of psychotherapy. So if you think of a pyramid, Alan Shaw would be at the top, and then Louis Cozolino the next layer down. But that next layer down is superb, stunning. This is the fourth edition of The Neuroscience of Psychotherapy, a fantastic book. Volume 1 carried me through my Master of Science in Psychosocial Studies. And by Volume 3, or Edition 3, the third edition, there was the inclusion of a few pages, like a mini chapter, if you like, on altruism. That's been expanded now. And if we think of altruism could be defined as when a human being gives help or assistance to another human being that are not of their family or tribe. In other words, when we help a stranger. I think that there's something about the dynamics of when we help a stranger in contrast with the dynamics of when we don't help a stranger, that could be quite important for the socio-political dynamics of our time. It appears that the world is polarizing between those who are kind and compassionate and those who are self-centered and possibly cruel. So this could have some information in it that's very useful, information that may assist you in contributing to the well-being of your own brain health. And anything that contributes to the well-being of our brain health is definitely worthy of our attention, you know? So this means I have to adopt the dyslexic's friend. And so if you've seen the previous videos, you'll know all about these. Right, so let's look then inside the Neuroscience of Psychotherapy, 4th edition, and head our way over to the chapter of altruism and psychotherapy. It's chapter 18 on page 264. Okay. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi. Oh, by the way, I would say that through this, there are references to brain anatomy. The easiest way to be able to follow would be to, as you're watching this, have a Google page open or a dictionary to hand and Google each brain anatomy part as we go, just so that you can track the biology of it. Might be an idea to do that second time you watch, so that first time you get the narrative and the second time you can follow the detail. Okay? All right, here we go. Most of us have experienced the positive thoughts and warm feelings associated with giving and receiving acts of kindness. Giving to others warms our hearts, connects us to others, and makes us feel better about ourselves. As a social species, taking care of others has evolved because it is essential for both individual and group survival. As evidence of altruism's deep history, We even observe these behaviors in our primate cousins and other species. The neurobiological mechanisms of altruistic behaviors are sequenced in our genes, wired into our brains, and woven into our cultures. For countless eons, humans lived in small bands of hunter-gatherers in relatively stable social environments. In the face of climate change, geological upheaval, and the shifting availability of resources, human groups had to adapt to new challenges in order to survive. Our brains evolved into social organs as natural selection favored those groups that were more exploratory, adaptive, and cooperative. Groups with more team players would naturally be better able to hunt, fight, and breed with more success. If you played for your team would more likely survive, as would your children and your DNA. Over time, what began as instincts to care for our children allowed us to attach to mates, extend family, and members of our tribes. The brain's ability to identify with larger and larger groups enabled tribes to come together to form kingdoms, city-states, and nations. To this day, groups that are unable to grow larger, cooperate, and become more powerful can become easy prey for those who can, leading to colonization, exploitation, and even annihilation. Given our evolutionary history, it is easy to understand why we possess the dual motivations for selfishness and selflessness. What we call morals, ethics, and the golden rule are the cultural expressions of this delicate balance between self and other. What we admire as altruism, self-sacrifice, and acts of bravery reflect a successful communal survival strategy. As evidence of its importance, research has demonstrated that altruistic behaviors correlate with greater life satisfaction, longevity, and better physical health. Altruistic individuals also report being happier, exhibit fewer mental disturbances, and experience fewer negative thoughts. This means that altruistic people will be around longer to contribute to their tribe and that they will be rewarded for their contributions by having a more enjoyable life. Attachment, emotional attunement, and connection have also come to serve the role of healing psychological distress. This is ultimately why the therapeutic relationship is our strongest lever of change in psychotherapy. Long before the advent of psychotherapy, the work of healing was done in relationships with family, friends, and wise elders. Unfortunately, the professionalization of interpersonal healing left concepts like altruism behind. Oh, and by the way, with all of these sentences in brackets, there are references to the sources of the information, a bibliography. It would be too much for me to read all of that out, and also too much for me to type it all out. But what I'll do is, in a comment beneath this book, I'll put a link beneath the video so you can get the book and then look it up and follow the paper chain and research. And you can do that. Right. In reality, altruism is at the heart of therapy. Research has consistently demonstrated that much of the success of psychotherapy depends upon the therapeutic alliance, support, generosity of spirit, respect, and positive regard. Traditional therapeutic relationship is a form of professionalized altruism, a non-reciprocal relationship established in order to allow our clients to explore and develop their inner worlds. While therapists don't usually define what we do as altruistic because we are paid for our services, most of us realize that our work goes beyond a fee-for-service relationship. The caring, loving, and reparenting that go on in the consulting room require a personal investment, We become vulnerable to our client's suffering, our client's joy and heartbreak. The ways in which the brain becomes activated in the face of altruistic behavior underlies certain aspects of positive change in psychotherapy. Given the interactive nature of connecting with others and self-growth, this raises two questions. One, do these processes reflect the underlying value of a positive therapeutic relationship? And two, could engaging in altruistic activities between sessions stimulate therapeutic change? Altruism and the brain. Individual versus group selection results in a mix of altruism and selfishness, of virtue and sin, among the members of a society. E.O. Wilson. The brain grows and develops through stimulation, challenge, and use. This is why experienced meditators have larger brain regions involved with self-awareness, why pianists have expanded cortical areas controlling their fingers, and why those who engage in challenging careers have more complex neural networks, making them resistant to the effects of dementia. The cognitive reserve hypothesis by Stern in 2002. An assumption of this work is that altruistic behavior will develop neural networks in a way that will support the therapeutic process. Another thing that is beginning to become clear is that networks dedicated to the experience of self and other overlap in our brains. This is why being more aware of ourselves helps us to be more mindful of others, and why self-compassion leads to greater compassion of others. For these reasons, altruistic behaviors could potentially drive the development of brain regions dedicated to attachment, self-efficacy, perspective-taking, and compassion. Support for this idea lies not only in a great deal of brain research, but also in folk wisdom, religious traditions, and philosophies of many social organizations. Humans are not the only species to have developed social brains. Elephants, dolphins, and many other species also possess them. Long before Homo sapiens arrived on the scene, attachment and sustained pair bonding blossomed from the underlying biology of mammalian mother-child relationships. As primate brains became more sophisticated, these instincts were expanded in ways that allowed us to connect with larger number of others. Today, our social affiliations are driven by a wide array of neurological processes, from primitive neurohormones to sophisticated cortical networks. Each of the neurochemicals and neural networks that contribute to altruism evolved from multiple purposes that came together in an almost miraculous way to enhance our ability to connect with others and feel united as a family, tribe, or species. If I mispronounce anything, please forgive me. Right. Neurochemicals, oxytocin and dopamine. Although there is a full orchestra of neurochemicals underlying our drive to bond and attach, I focus here on two primary molecules, oxytocin and dopamine. When mothers and children come together, separate, and reunite, their oxytocin levels rise, fall, and rise again. Separation anxiety in a child and the distress we experience when we can't find our child are both driven by a precipitous fall in oxytocin. The amygdala, the executive center of our fear circuitry, is rich in oxytocin receptors and is inhibited by the presence of oxytocin. By inhibiting the amygdala, oxytocin allows us to feel safer, which enhances neuroplasticity, new learning, and adaptive change. As we evolved into more sophisticated beings, oxytocin became involved with our experiences of pleasure, pain, anxiety, irritability, and aggression. As you might expect, the feelings of well-being and diminished fear go along with increased levels of oxytocin, the reward for staying close to and taking care of the ones we love. Oxytocin makes us feel safer, triggers a wide range of positive physical and emotional experiences. Decreases in oxytocin make us feel abandoned and lost, and put us at risk for self-destructive and suicidal behavior. Being addicted to love means we become addicted to the neurochemicals of proximity to a loved one. That closeness activates. Many use relationships to regulate the negative emotions such as anxiety, loneliness, and depression. This is also why critical, hostile, and abusive relationships take such a negative toll on our minds, bodies, and spirits. People who report engaging in more altruistic behavior have higher levels of oxytocin, which suggests that altruistic acts may be stimulated by oxytocin. It is also possible that altruistic behavior stimulates the production of oxytocin, which may account for how good it feels to give to others. Higher levels of oxytocin also correlate with greater trust, empathy, and cooperation, and in-group bias. When we feel lost, frightened, or depressed, oxytocin activation is likely to decrease negative feelings and make us seek out comfort from others. Working in connection with oxytocin is dopamine, the brain's primary reward neurochemical. If natural selection has shaped us to do something to enhance our survival, the behavior will likely be paired with dopamine. Dopamine activation pairs a physiological activation with to activities, objects, and other people. Dopamine drives our shopping patterns, eating habits, and who we hang out with. Altruistic behavior feels good, in part, because the ventral tegmental area and mesolimbic pathway, which make and deliver dopamine to the rest of the brain, become more active. Oxytocin and dopamine have a very special and important relationship. When we see something that stimulates our dopamine reward center, say buying a new car, it makes us feel good. After a month, the car is just another car because we've habituated to it. But if we see something that activates both dopamine and oxytocin release, say a new baby, after a month, the baby is still very special. This is because the stimulus activation or simultaneous activation of oxytocin and dopamine inhibits dopamine habituation. Fads come and go. We grow tired of possessions, but we continue to look forward to seeing those we love. While oxytocin and dopamine are modulating and reinforcing our connection with others, an array of neural networks allow us to understand, attune to, and empathize with the internal states of those around us. A variety of brain regions that become active during altruism are dedicated to social intelligence, emotional regulation, and the experience of self. These neural networks make it possible to recognize significant others and experience their feelings in our own bodies, establishing the groundwork for attunement and empathy. The right amygdala. Although the amygdala is the executive center of our fear circuitry, it is much more than that. It is a structure that appraises both good and bad things in our world, signaling the body to approach that which is good and to avoid that which is bad. Like the cerebral hemispheres, the amygdala are on both sides of the brain and have lateralized specialities. The left amygdala focuses more on the external world, while the right amygdala specializes in internal experience. The right amygdala coupled with the functional expertise of the right cortex, is more involved with the internal emotional experience of self and other. When we struggle with emotional pain, shame, and loneliness, it is likely that the right amygdala is involved. People referred to as extraordinary altruists have been found to have a significantly larger right amygdala, which becomes more active than the left side in response to fearful facial expressions. This suggests that these extraordinary altruists may have a deeper recognition of and a stronger emotional reaction to the pain of others. In contrast, psychopaths who lack empathy and altruism have significantly reduced right amygdala volume. The orbitomedial prefrontal cortex, we'll call it the OMPFC for short. The OMPFC is a key structure in the organization of social connection and when our attention turns to the experience of self and empathizing with others. Thus, it is not surprising that we see a considerable activation of the OMPFC during altruistic behavior. At the apex of attachment circuitry, the OMPFC is able to regulate the amygdala and other subcortical structures, allowing for proximity to caretakers and loved ones to modulate our anxiety and fear. What we call secure attachment is essentially the ability to experience stress in the absence of autonomic arousal, i.e. the fight-flight response. I'll just read that out again because I think that's useful to pay attention to. What we call secure attachment is essentially the ability to experience stress in the absence of autonomic arousal. I would say that all organisms experience pressure in life, the pressure to find food, the pressure to escape being eaten for the food of others, right? At the very least. Every flower is pressured to attract a bee. Every bee is pressured to find a flower. Right? But the ability to be able to experience pressure, stress in life without switching on the fight and flight, that is the sense of security. Because, pressure will always exist. There will always be storms in life. It's not the absence of storms that make us happy. It's the ability to learn how to surf. And that's what this is leading to. As you might guess, securely attached individuals have been found to be more helpful to others and to engage in more altruistic behaviors. They also express more compassionate feelings and provide more caretaking. The activation of OMPFC circuitry through altruistic behavior will likely stimulate bonding and attachment in situations where altruists feel safe. This may be why taking care of animals often serves as a valuable bridge to relationships for those with social anxiety or PTSD. This could be a step towards connection that might allow clients to experience intimacy with relationships with people. The circuits connecting with the OMPFC and amygdala are the central neural target for developing a strong therapeutic bond, which stimulates transference, neuroplasticity, and change in psychotherapy. Okay? Right. The temporal parietal junction. The area of the cortex where the temporal and parietal lobes meet, the temporal parietal junction, or TPJ, is involved with the storage of social and emotional memory and experiencing the interface of self and others. This may be the area that activates our personal memory when observing others, supporting the process of projection and transference. The TPJ becomes more active than other cortical regions when we make a decision to engage in an altruistic act, and in response to expressions of empathy and sympathy from others. Altruistic individuals have more grey matter in the TPJ, suggesting that they may be touched more deeply by others and experience deeper self-other interactions. Research has demonstrated that this region is involved in the identification and processing of social cues from others, as well as the exercise of self-agency. It is likely that the TPJ automatically connects the distress we see in others with memories of our own distress, allowing us to leverage our personal history to have sympathy for others and take action to assist them. It would make sense that the TPJ is an important area of brain activation in both clients and therapists during states of attunement, transference, countertransference, projective identification, and enactments as implicit memories of past relationships become activated during sessions. The superior temporal zone. Adjacent to the TPJ is the superior temporal zone, or STZ, another brain region that becomes activated during altruistic behavior. These areas, the posterior superior temporal cortex and superior temporal sulcus, are dedicated to different aspects of social connectedness. While the superior cortex is responsible for receptive language, the superior sulcus helps us to understand facial gestures and expressions. Together, they support social processes such as imitation, joint attention, modeling, and theory of mind. The STZ is particularly active during face-to-face interactions in the psychotherapeutic relationship. Mirror neurons. Mirror neurons within the frontal and parietal lobes fire both when we engage in a behavior and when we watch another engage in the same behavior. Mirror neurons are thought to be central to the brain's ability to learn through observation and imitation, as well as the development of gestural communication and spoken language. Due to their connectivity with other social and emotional neural networks, mirror neurons are also assumed to play a significant role in allowing us to feel both the pain of others in need and their joy when they receive our help. Central aspects of altruism and the therapeutic connection. The default mode network. The DMN has been found to become active when we are reflecting on ourselves and others. It is likely that the DMN also serves as a neural platform for social cognition, empathy, and altruism. The DMN, along with other neural networks, appears to combine a sensory experience of the body and external world that allows us to have a conscious experience of ourselves in imaginal space within the flow of time. Within this imaginal space, we can engage in relationships, take the perspective of others, ponder moral dilemmas, and imagine future outcomes. This function is vital to the development of the experience of subjectivity, self, and our appreciation of the experience of others. We are attempting to activate this circuit when we encourage clients to shift from a posture of defensiveness to one of open self-reflection, or from thoughts about the external world to reflecting on distressing emotions and memories. This may well be the circuit that becomes most active when an interaction hits home and clients are able to relax their defenses. These neural circuits of the social brain serve as the infrastructure for language and culture. The religious beliefs and political systems that emerge reflect the challenges of navigating our simultaneous drives towards self-preservation and also caring for others. Our religious and political beliefs are therefore important cues as to how our brains and minds struggle to process and navigate complex social relationships. As therapists, we need to be open to and accepting of many of our clients' beliefs, while being mindful that they may hold valuable cues about their internal struggles. Altruism in religion and politics. The co-evolution of love and aggression increased our ability to nurture and protect those closest to us. The juxtaposition of those conflicting instincts may help us to understand our vulnerability to domestic violence and jealous rage, or why some people can act so kindly towards some, but so cruelly towards others. The battle between empathy and selfishness played out in everyday life is the focus of our secular laws and religious commandments. Most religious traditions promote harmony and unity among all people, and many place altruistic acts at the center of their belief systems. Despite the diversity of spiritual traditions, the insight of human connectedness, species consciousness, is a consistent theme. To this day, those who consider themselves to be religious feel and are seen by others as more altruistic, empathetic, and pro-social. This suggests that species consciousness is a part of a broad adaptational process that resides deep within us. Our conflicting instincts towards selfishness and altruism are reflected in the polarization between left-wing politics and right-wing politics. Right-wing political people are commonly characterized as being self-centered and protective of their own interests. In contrast, left-wing political people are seen as being over-concerned with issues of justice and equality, while not attending enough to fiscal realities. The broadening divide between right-wing political people and left-wing political people that has stalled our political system has even drawn the attention of non-neuroscientists. While just a few studies have compared the brain of both left and right followers, some interesting findings have emerged. As you may have already anticipated, the brains of left-wing people have a larger anterior cingulate, a region involved in both attachment and nurturance. Left-wing people also have higher levels of activity in their left insula when assessing risk, suggestive of a greater sensitivity to their own internal states and the internal states of others. Put in a slightly different way, followers of left-wing political ideology feel more themselves and feel more for others, making empathy a strong guiding factor when making political decisions. Left-wing people may also be better able to regulate their fear in interpersonal situations. In contrast, the brains of right-wing people appear biased towards seeing the world as dangerous, while being less focused on the experience and needs of others. Right-wing brains have a greater amygdala volume, right amygdala activity, and fear reactivity in the face of a threat. At the same time, right-wing brains show decreased volume in anterior cingulate, suggesting both a lack of activation in attachment circuitry and a decreased ability to be alert to subtle differences in arguments. For right-wing thinkers, issues are seen as a more function of right and wrong. The difference between self and other focuses found in the brains of right-wing followers and left-wing followers, when faced with political issues, impacts the way in which they frame problems and search for solutions. Fear driven by amygdala activation, makes all of us more self-protective, causing us to think in black and white terms and more rigid in our beliefs. Thinking about others requires activation of attachment circuits, which inhibit the amygdala and activate the anterior cingulate, allowing those individuals to distinguish shades of grey and tolerate the anxiety of uncertainty. This suggests that a client's political beliefs may give us a clue as to how his or her brain have organized and how we might adapt theory to fit them. Politics appears to tap into the altruistic drive of left-wing people and inhibit it in right-wing people. Of course, the real-world adaptive value of either position depends on the situation. It would have been much better for Neville Chamberlain to be more suspicious of Adolf Hitler, while the British would have been served well if they'd had more empathy for Gandhi's call for an independent India. At a group level, each tribe is better off with a mixture of both of these biases. Together, they may offer the best balance of care for outgroup members and safe group boundaries. Right-wing people are more generous with people they know, while left-wing people have more altruistic attitudes towards strangers. The important issue for our present discussion is that these differences in attitudes may give us insight into the biases built into the organization of our client's neural circuitry. So remember that this book is looking at the neuroscience of altruism with a reference to how it may be useful to observe these dynamics in a client situation for the purpose of understanding a client. So in other words, how a person will discuss their orientation towards left-wing or right-wing politics will give us some clues as to how their brain is organized. And how their brain is organized is the driver of those biases. One of the things that I find useful from this is the notion that altruistic acts are so healthy for our attachment, for our overall system of health. It helps to regulate our emotions. It calms the affective system. It means that we're more resilient to change, pressures, stresses. We're altogether far healthier, both neurochemically, biologically, and emotionally, when we engage in acts of altruism of other people. And there's also the other word that was very interesting in there, longevity as well. There's a suggestion through all of that engaging in altruistic acts of being kind towards others, being kind towards strangers, not only makes us feel good, but it could lengthen our lives, and it could also benefit the health of our brain as we grow through time as well. Just a thought. I wanted to share that because I think it's very important. It's important for us individually. It's important for us on a sociology level as well. Our tribe, our human tribe, needs to remember the benefits that come from kindness, in my opinion. Thank you for your time in looking at the science of wisdom. See you next time. Thank you. Take care. Bye.